Hey guys, it's Ian here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're doing another Ramble video. Today we're doing our Ramble video for January, and because I didn't really have a good talking point or topic today, I thought it'd be interesting to do a video about my favorite covers of 2024. There's 10 of them here. I thought about 15 to 17 covers, and then I narrowed down my list from those. And I tried to keep it to one book per series or one cover per series, and tried to avoid multiple covers by the same artist. And I think I succeeded in that, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure though. And they're not really it's not important what order they're in, but I did want to divide it into sections or into parts just because it'd probably be a bit better and a bit easier, right? So there's going to be the 10 to 5 and then or 10 to 6, right? The lower half of the list and then the upper half of the list. And the division really isn't all that meaningful. It's mostly just okay, these front covers are really good, but they're kind of basic, or there's value to them that isn't necessarily directly due to the art. And then the top 5 are the ones that are much more about the artwork, right? So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think that the vast majority of the time, comic book issue covers are pretty great. And since I usually only buy cover A, I don't really go out of my way to buy second or tertiary covers, covers B's or C's or any of the special ones. I usually get a pretty good set of covers regardless of, the series and stuff. It's not like I chase anything. But usually cover A's are pretty good, right? There's been some issues here and there sometimes where I'm okay, why was this cover A? Is this really the best cover that you could do? And most of the time, this is with indie covers, right? Or things like Conan the Barbarian. I feel like there was a few Conan the Barbarian covers in the 20 issues that we've had so far of that series that were just are you sure you want this to be your main cover, right? Cover B and C were significantly better. You could order them, but I usually try to avoid doing that just because I don't want to force myself or find myself wanting variant covers all that much, right? But that's enough yapping here at the introduction. Let's get started here. At number 10, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles X Naruto, or, the crossover with Naruto. And this one is really fun and great. I think Jorge Jimenez does a great job with his artwork, but it's at the bottom of the list because even though it's cool and wonderful, the artwork isn't really what makes it really special to me. What I really love about this cover is the fact that we have these two awesome ninja series interacting on a cover. I feel like that is a bit surreal, especially in the kind of world that we kind of live in. I feel like Japanese manga and Western comic books are technically the same thing, right? And I believe that they are the same medium. But for whatever reason, the discourse online about them is always about why one is better than the other. And I have been part of this discourse myself. The more I get into the comic book hobby, the less I think it's all that different. The more I find them that they're just the same thing that offer slightly different takes, right, on the same kind of concepts. And I always think that it's hard for these interactions to happen, right? It's hard for Western comic book audiences and Eastern comic book audiences to collide. And yet we have this. And that's why I think it's super cool. It's really interesting. And this really encapsulates what that is, right? It's just a load of fun. It's a lot of, great moments and great interactions there. And I love Mikey and Naruto kind of being center stage there because they're the ones with the similar color scheme, right? So yeah, that's why I like that cover. Then we have Transformers number 9. This one's a pretty simple cover, but there's something just really impactful about this, right? I think that the style is fine. I think this was by Dana Warren Johnson, but the idea of this cover, right? The fact that, Optimus Prime is Atlas. He is holding up the world. He is the last line of defense against the Decepticons. He's the reason why they're here. And that means that he is holding the weight of the world on his shoulders. And because of his position as leader and his, recent difficulties and his, you could almost say, naivety, I guess that's the right way to word it, he is in this position. And I think it's great. I just think that it's a pretty simple cover. It's just a big sphere in the middle of a white background, right? Like that's not super exciting, which is why it's low on the list, even though I think that the concept is really high value, right? And then we have Helen of Windhorn, number 6. This is the last book in the series, and I really like it. I think it's really cool. But the thing is that this doesn't really encapsulate what I think Helen of Windhorn is about. I mean, it does have this awesome fantasy vibe to it. It does have, you know, this old love in the background there. But the series, or this cover, it really feels more like a Shazam cover to me, right? It looks like something Mary Marble would be doing, more so than it is something Helen of Windhorn would be doing, right? I would have liked to see her really be a warrior character instead of this like interesting acrobat that happens to be wielding some axes, right? So I really like it. I think it's beautiful. Bilquis Evely has an amazing way with this, and Lopez, Matthew Lopez does a great job at making Bilquis Evely's artwork, you know, really pop with all his colors. But this isn't higher on the list because it almost feels like maybe this isn't the cover for this. But out of all of the covers that I had, I do find this to be very striking, right? So I quite like it. And I really like the colors on there, but they do kind of give me almost a Shazam vibe, right? So yeah. Then we have Gun Honey Collision Course number 1. This is by Derek Chu, and this one's awesome. I think the face almost falls a little bit into like, you know, AI bait, if that makes sense, but I like the pose. I like the composition here. I think that it looks wonderful. And it really manages to convey this like title, right? Gun Honey is this gorgeous lady that also likes to have guns and or has some connection to guns, right? And I just think that this pose and everything about it is great, right? And I think that her outfit, or like, you know, the little bits of cloth that she's supposed to be wearing are all supposed to be leather, and that's pretty well managed to show there, right? So, you know, there is a shininess to it, but there's also like a slight texture to it that it is very well done. So I think Derek Chu really ate up this cover, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's number 7. Here's number 6. This is Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Fatal Exams, number 5. This is a Lucio Perillo cover. I had a really tough time because I generally find Lucio Perillo's covers to be amazing, to be really beautiful and really wonderful. And, you know, it was between this and one of the Red Sonja covers he did this year, right? I think it was either 10 or 11 of the Red Sonja series by Thorman Grombeck and Walter Giovanni that I was struggling with, right? And ultimately I picked this one because I see like a billion Red Sonja covers by Lucio Perillo, but I rarely get to see him do a blonde lady, and I rarely get to see him do something like this, where it's not really all about showing off the full figure. It's about just going, you know, from midriff up. And in this one, he manages to really do that very well. I also love the work that he did on her face. I think that this is just because this sort of, you know, fierce white lady kind of vibe is what really attracts me, right? I like these types of characters and these types of actresses, right? You know, I quite think that they're very beautiful. The only thing that I kind of have here that there's a little bit of an issue is that every once in a while with Lucio Perillo's work, you kind of notice details that are a bit off, right? There's a little bit of a oddity in the perspective or whatever, because, you know, he has to paint the picture nude, and then he makes a print of it, and then he makes the you know, acceptable version that gets put on the cover, right? And in this case, it's that the angle of this bra strap of this leopard skin does not match the angle of this one, right? And maybe that's correct, but it looks kind of off to me. And so it's like a little bit of a issue there. But I mean, he even has a vein on her arm that looks really well done. So this is like very high quality artwork. It's just, it almost always has a little bit of a little ding here and there where you notice something's a little bit off, right? But overall, Sheena number 5, awesome stuff, right? So that was the bottom half of the list. Here we have the top half, and I guess there really isn't too much difference between the bottom half and the top half, but the bottom half was mostly like stuff that I felt I had some slight issues with here and there, or things that weren't necessarily because the artwork was that good. It was about the meaning or the message more so than, you know, the spectacularness of the artwork, right? But these up here are really about, you know, the artwork being awesome. And we'll start with Unnatural Order number 4. This is the last book in this series, although I think that there's going to be a second set of books in this. And this one is really awesome to me because, you know, sword and sorcery is very common. You know, seeing characters that have fantasy weapons that also have this kind of like fantasy element behind them is really awesome and very common. But it's very rare to see these fantasy creatures and guns at the same time, right? And I really like the kind of, I guess, juxtaposition, right, of this character who's this modern military guy, and you can clearly see that he's a modern military guy there, and these green creatures in the background, these things that look like dragons or hounds or, you know, some sort of crazy fantasy creature. And that's basically what this story is about, right? It is almost like it's a sword and sorcery story that follows characters that really should be modern military characters in some way or another. And I find that juxtaposition or that kind of concept to be really interesting and cool, because it's not something we see all that often, right? I mean, I guess we see it in superhero media, but superhero media almost feels more like sci-fi to me generally than it does fantasy. So yeah, that's why I really love this cover. Also, just all of the green. And the fact that they managed to make it all really visible and clear, even though it is all basically the same color. So a very high quality work there from, let's see, I guess this is from Rodriguez, the guy that does the artwork for this story. But it doesn't have a signature or anything on it, so I'm not really sure, right? I'm not 100%. But yeah, then we have Witchblade number 2. I just love the pose here. I think this concept of like this beautiful woman kind of being attacked or kind of consumed, I guess is the right word, by this eldritch thing that happens to be a little bit like a snake, a little bit like a spider, and, you know, this, broadly speaking, this monstrous thing that also kind of helps her is really, really cool, and I really like it. I think this is probably the best cover they've done for Witchblade so far, besides that, like, you know, homage cover that they did with the big W and the that's supposed to be an homage to Wolverine, I think. That one's probably the best cover that they've ever done for Witchblade, but this one is up there for me personally. I really, really like it. I think it looks great. There really is nothing to complain about here. I also like that, you know, the Witchblade is supposed to be a gauntlet, and within that gauntlet, you have this ability to make it look like a snake, right? Which is what they're doing there. And it looks great. I just love how they played with that. So yeah, I think Cafaro did a great job with that, and Prianto did a great job with the coloring as well. Then we have Dawn Runner number 5. I think this is the last book in the series, and this cover is just really haunting and really beautiful because it really matches the concept of the story. It's about sacrifice, and it's about saving the next generation. It's about doing what you can, and this, you know, monster that looks a little bit like a Zaku or a little bit like a Zeon kind of character, as well as a little bit like an Evangelion, having this like robotic bony hand gently holding this young lady, this young girl that you know, we know through the artwork to be through the storytelling to be like special and someone that needs to be protected. I just find it to be really awesome, and I love the color here. It's very interesting that there's so much lightness to the color, if that makes sense. Like, usually you don't see a pure white cover, right? Usually they're very saturated and have a lot of stuff going on. And this one does have a lot of stuff going on, but it manages to keep this kind of like light gray, eggshell, white kind of color scheme that goes into gray at the bottom there. And I think it looks really, really great. And I love that the pink of the eyeball matches with the pink down there. So overall, very good stuff there. I really, really like this cover a lot. I think it's very beautiful in a way that really resonates with how the story is told, right? What the story is about. So I like that a lot. Then we have Savage Sword of Conan, number 1. I'm hiding my name here because I got it signed by Jim Zub. And this cover is by Joe Jusko. And Joe Jusko is, you know, a classic artist for these sort of pulpy kind of things. And I think he does an amazing job here. This one is partially special to me because it has a signature by Jim Zub. And it's kind of like the first story, or like it's the return of the Savage Sword of Conan. And it's my first introduction to it because I'd never read it before. But I think the vaguely Egyptian kind of vibe to it, the characters here dying and dead in the ground, and Conan standing triumphant above, and with this beautiful lady next to him. It's just awesome. I just really love how it looks, right? I don't necessarily like how Joe Jusko makes Conan's face look, but that's not really a complaint because it's rarely all that important. It's all about the composition. It's all about, you know, kind of creating this pinnacle, this centerpiece there with Conan at the center. And I love it. I think it looks great. But it's not my favorite. My favorite cover is actually from Penthouse Comics. It's the first book in the Penthouse relaunch that they had this year, or this past year. And it's by Cafaro, I think. No, sorry, it's not by Cafaro. Let me double check here. It should say, but I'm not 100% sure. It's by Matteo Scalera, who I like quite a lot from his work on Recommender series. I can't remember which one. I think it's Black Science. And I just love this. I think that this pseudo-futuristic kind of vibe that it has, this, you know, almost Kamen Rider vibe that the bike has, because it looks like a grasshopper, right? Is awesome. I love this kind of like almost callback, I guess you could call it, to something like Dragon Ball, right? Like Bulma. There's this very well-known image of Bulma riding a capsule bike. I think it's Capsule 19, and that has this very similar vibe to it, and I love it. And also reminds me a lot of Star Wars, you know, speeder bikes, like the one that Dooku rides around in. And I just love this pose, right? This very interesting kind of like war girl kind of vibe to it that just works so well for me. So yeah, that's number one. It's probably my favorite cover of the year. It's kind of a bit weird because I don't necessarily think that the Penthouse Comics magazine was really all that great, in my opinion. I still haven't reviewed the last one that came out last year, nor have I done a review of the whole thing. But Penthouse Comics is not necessarily the greatest thing ever. I think that there's moments of brilliance to them, especially like this cover and stuff, but they haven't really managed to get to where they need to be. And especially with the fact that, you know, Heavy Metal's relaunching this year, they might not get that chance. So it's kind of difficult to see where it's going to go, but they at least managed to do very well with this first cover. And I really love it. There was another cover that was really great too. That was cover number 5. And it's actually my favorite in terms of artwork. The thing is that cover was wrongly prepared. It wasn't given the trade dressing that it needed. And so even though it is the best in terms of art, it is not actually a good cover because it doesn't have all the information you need, right? And so I don't feel that it deserves the praise that it probably should get because it's not well made. So yeah, anyway, those are my favorite covers of 2024. Hopefully I'll start doing this for all of the years following, this one. I had wanted to do one for 2023 and before, but I just never got around to it. And at that point I was like, well, maybe it's too late to do it now, right? Like I had time to do it in December and I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do it anymore, right? Maybe it's not necessary. So yeah, so I decided to do it this time, and hopefully it's a good video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your top favorite covers of 2024 were. I know there were some really awesome ones, especially the variant ones. I just don't usually buy those. So let me know down below. Let me know what you thought. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time.